Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show, where we talk about all components of business and how to utilize them for exponential growth. My name is Athin Cassiotis. I'm a business growth expert where I help business owners grow and scale to create wealth and freedom. And today, I have an awesome guest. He's an international profiling and communications specialist, regularly featured on national TV, radio, and in the world's press, profiling the likes of our leading politicians, TV and sports stars, as well as Britain's royalty. He's been referred by the UK Guardian as the leading authority on reading people globally, and the Mentalist meets Dr. Phil by the Herald. And he has worked with international clients, the likes of Disney Films and Gillette, and high-profile organizations like the Australian Federal Police to help them understand how people tick. And he works with business owners and executives, helping them to understand and engage their clients and prospects, enhancing their presentations and negotiation skills, and with parents and teachers to help them enhance their ability, the ability of their children to reach their full potential while improving the experience of parents, teacher, and the student. And he shows you how to read people to build successful relationships, negotiations, improve teams, staff loyalty, and close deals faster. Welcome, Alan Stevens. Thank you for being on my show.
Thanks very much. And when you said you were cutting it down, I think, my God, was it that long, or was it even longer than that when I sent it to you?
That is an awesome bio. I kept in all the good parts. It was even longer, so I couldn't take too much out of there, mate. You've definitely got a lot of awesome experience. So I had to portray it for everybody there. But even more so, I guess from your side of things, you are a very successful entrepreneur. And for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself and tell us more about you and your journey.
Well, as you said, I'm a profile and communications specialist, which is all about helping people to understand other people, being able to read them, etc. And people always ask me, and I've always had this skill in my life. And I go, well, if I look back over my past before I learned how to read people the way I do today, 2 divorces, a lot of broken relationships, business partners who emptied the bank out. So I came from a background of absolute necessity. I grew up with my mother and sister in Sydney. My father died when I was 3, so I didn't really have any male role models around me. And my whole childhood was in trying to build relationships, bullied at school on a regular basis, and spent a lot of time on my own. So for the first half of my year, I've had a real passion to build relationships. Now I'm into the second half of my life. Then it's more now about being able to not so much find the relationships myself, but help other people to build relationships. When I was 23, I lived in Sydney originally, but I left there and came to Newcastle, working for the old Postmaster General's department. And the day it became Telstra, was put in charge of men who were all older than me. My second in charge was I was 23 and he was 38. So 15 years difference. I had to get him on side, and also all the other guys who were older than me as well. And that's where I started learning that I needed to find new ways of understanding people. I started with body language. That was in the 70s. In the 80s, I got involved with psychometric profiling, asking people questions to learn how to read them. Then from there, in the 90s, got involved with NLP. And I know that you've got a background in NLP as well, so you understand where all that comes in. And then in the early 2000s, I realized that I needed better ways of reading people, because when you ask people questions, they try and second guess them. And so I needed a system in which I could look at somebody, know their personalities, and know if I'd read them right and if they were telling the truth, by just looking at them, and then by asking them certain questions, where not asking them to fill out a questionnaire. And that led me on to finding out how to read faces. And that's when it really came together for me. So, and that was leading up to, the first 60 years of my life. I'm in my 70s now. So that was in my 50s that I really went through most of that. In my 70s, I'm now helping people to build their relationships through a group called the Campfire Project. Because I know a lot of your listeners have been through tough times with COVID, with the fires, with the floods that were going on around the place, and mental health issues from trying to work from home and everything else. Who do they go and talk to? Where they don't get counsel, where they just have somebody listen and hold their space. And that's where the Campfire Project came in. So from my business building relationships, it's now gone into the personal life and helping people in the community and building stronger relationships and stronger communities.
Beautiful. What an amazing journey there. And I love all those different decades of, different focus areas. And yeah, you've amassed so much experience and tools, I'm sure. And firstly, I'd like to ask, like, a lot of people are thinking, do I really need to do this? So why should we care about, reading people and human patterns?
Well, let's face it, if you're in business, it doesn't matter how good a product or service you have, nobody's going to give you the time for you to be able to prove how good it is unless you can build a relationship. When we're growing up, and we decide that we want to find a partner, if we can't build a relationship there, well, and let's face it, to convince somebody to spend the rest of their life with you, that's the biggest sale you're ever going to try and get. So everything we do in life is really a sale. Getting your kids to eat their broccoli and things like that, there's a sale in that. So it comes down to, how do we connect with somebody? And the more that we're able to read them and understand them, we're able to build a relationship, and then building the relationship, we're able to run the rest of our life, whether that be in business with your teams, whether it be in getting more sales, or whether it be raising a family. And also, how do you communicate with people in your social life? The people that we like, know, and trust are the people that are similar to us. But what about the other people? The majority of people that we're going to be selling to, for instance, don't have our personality. Everybody on the planet's different. It's a big sliding scale between all the different personality types. And so making a connection with somebody, if you want to get more sales, you need to be able to read people and have those better connections.
Yeah, I love that. Really powerful. Great to pre-frame in an NLP term about why we should be focusing on this, which is really awesome. And you mentioned about personalities there. Let's delve a bit deeper into that, because like you said, there's a lot of people who've got different personalities. So what are some ways that we can read people's personalities?
Well, I work with 4 areas when it comes to working with somebody. First, I need to be able to understand their personality. Then I need to know how to change the way that, knowing my personality, knowing how I like to be spoken to, change that to match the way that they like to be spoken to. So tuning my transmitter into their receiver, because it's not their interest to understand me. I want to get the message across, so it's my focus that I have to talk in the way that they understand me. Then I need to be able to read them to know whether I've read them right or not. So the 4 areas I work with, the first one being able to read them, and this is where some of your audience may sound, oh, this is a little bit woo-woo, is this clairvoyant? Your facial features tell me your personality. And if you think about it, if you lift weights, you'll build muscles in your body. At the same time, we all know that everything we feel inside, we express outwardly. So our neurology and physiology are linked. So whatever we feel inside, we express outwardly. So think about it while you're concentrating and working. If you're somebody who really focuses in tightly on things and doesn't like interruptions and everything else, you'll lock everything else out, and the expression on your face will be really strong. You're working the muscles. If you keep thinking that way over and over, you're building ridges and crevices on your face that become a roadmap, a history of how you like to think and process. So as we get older, the face tells us so much more about that person, the life they've had, the way they like to think and process, and therefore the way they like to be treated. And so that's the first area. Then we know, okay, I now know how you like to be spoken to. If I may, we're sitting here on Zoom, so if I can see your face, I can know straight away that when it comes to things, it's all about how it feels inside. So when you're focusing on something, the last thing you want to be is interrupted. Somebody who comes over, if you're focused and you're not talking to them and they're worried about what's going on and they're asking you lots of questions, that's going to take you off being able to focus on what you're doing. So you're going to withdraw into your cave. And if they don't understand that, they then think that something's wrong. You don't like them or whatever. And so we get misunderstandings. I also know that you're quite comfortable standing close to people when you meet them for the first time. That's a great trait to have, but being friendly with everybody is also the downside. Being friendly with the wrong people. The con artist, not really picking those out. So every trait has an upside and every trait has a downside. So by looking at that, I know then how to change the language that I like to use. I know that you will analyze something before you make a decision. You want all the information about it. Once you've worked it out, it's just get out of the way and give me the best way to do it and let me get it done. So you'll take time to get your head around things, and because you want to get all the information. But once you've done that and you made a decision, boom, they're off really quickly and into it. So if I know that, I know that if I'm giving you information, give it in a way in which all the questions you're going to have are going to be answered. And then just instead of saying, right, there's all these different ways you can do it, there are other ways of doing it, but this is the best way. And if I explain that right, you grasp on it, you're straight into getting out there and getting the job done. And so of talking your language, then by your body language and the expressions that you're having there while we're talking, gives me the information to know whether I read you right, is there something emotionally going on? And lastly, are you telling me the truth? And that's, I use micro expressions and body language. Now, body language, most of your listeners will know about that. Micro expressions are very fast and subtle expressions on the face, like, anger, contempt, disgust, those sort of things, but they are extremely fast. They're a fifth of a second down to 1/25th of a second. And what happens when somebody says something to you or something happens around you, we respond unconsciously. And then our conscious mind steps in and shuts the expression off. And that can be as fast as I said, as a fifth of a second down to 1/25th of a second. Think about, you've caught something out of the corner of your eye, you're walking through the bush, for instance. And the first feeling is a feeling of fear. Is that well, first of all, might be surprised. Is that a snake? Once we then realize it is, well, then it could be fear that we move into in our expression. So the surprise disappears, or we realize it's not. So we're more relaxed and that expression will change. So whenever in a conversation, if I'm talking to somebody and I make a statement and I look for that expression, I know that whether what they're feeling at the time. And because it's unconscious response, it's near impossible to camouflage and hide.
Yeah.
But as I said, I'm looking for, is there something emotionally going on? If I'm talking to somebody about, I'm doing a sale, for instance, talking about a product or service, and that person is, I realize their face is telling me one thing, their facial features, but they're behaving in a certain way that's different to that, contrary to it, I go, okay, something's going on here. So then I'll ask some questions, not to make a liar of them in any way, but to uncover what's going on. So I use the micro expressions of body language as a truth seeker, not a lie detector. Because if I'm doing a sale and I can see that somebody's not connected, I'm wasting my time trying to go on with the sale. Let's change the conversation. I can go, hey, something else is going on here. I can see that something else has got your attention. Is that something you'd like to talk about? And if I build that connection with them, I may not even look at doing the sale that day. I might say, hey, let's talk about this again another day, but let's have a bit more of a talk about what's going on here that's, that's on your mind. Now, because you do that, I guarantee you're going to build stronger rapport with that person. They're going to remember it, that you weren't just trying to flog a product or a service to them, that you were interested in them. And as they say, people only do business with those that they know, like, and trust. We break that into two parts. If they know and like you, they will listen to you. But then once you've built that up, then they, when you built the trust, then they'll buy from you. And so I would prefer not to do a sale with somebody if there's something not going right, but treat them in a way in which when they go away from that, they'll be telling everybody else about me. And let's face it, when somebody's talking about you, more people will listen to that than what they will listen to the ads that you put out, the social media or any emails you send. They'll listen more to another person talking about you. So I always say to people, make sure they're talking about you the right way. And that is focus on them, and this is how you get more sales. You chase a sale, it's like chasing a fox, it'll run. But if you build a relationship, I get a lot of people buying from me, but I don't sell. I don't need to. I treat them in a way in which they then want the services. So they're actually asking me if they can do, if I will sell to them. And you do that by building that relationship.
Yeah, nice, awesome. That was a powerful section. I loved all those different elements there. It reminds me of that old school saying that is untrue, where like treat people how you want to be treated, but it's actually treat people how they want to be treated.
That's it.
Is the real one, right? To really understand that, and loved all those different ways of how you look at it. And I love analyzing me as well, which is always interesting in the moment. And I know there's a lot of tools right out there, like, disc profiling as an example, right, is a common one that a lot of people would know about. What are your thoughts around tools? Are there certain tools that you use or recommend, for people to get a better understanding of others?
When it comes to DISC and Myers-Briggs, Enneagrams, I used to work with all of those back in the 80s, but that's when I first started learning those, and then into the 90s. In the early 2000s, there was a company that taught currency trading, and they came to me because none of their students were making any money. And the instructor they had, he was absolutely brilliant. He was a qualified trader who really knew his stuff, and he was a great trainer. I actually sat in on one of his courses to get my head around what they were doing. Then I realized that they didn't really understand the people. So we started using DISC and Myers-Briggs to profile people, asking them through questionnaires. And when especially when they went live, putting their own money on the table, they were still losing money, but they didn't match their personalities. And I asked a couple of people, and really grilled them to find out what was going on. And they turned around and said, "Oh, well, we answered the questionnaires in the way that we thought to become, we've got to be, what personality we had to be a good trader." And I'm going, no, whenever you're stressed, no matter, you can behave in a certain way, but when you're stressed, you'll always revert back to your own type. That's all we needed to know. That's why I realized in the early 2000s, I needed a better system. Now, Myers-Briggs and DISC and those sort of things, when you do a job application online and you're applying for a job, they will put psychometric testing in there. Absolutely necessary, because if you've got 1,000 people applying for a job, the last thing I want to do is sit there and face profile 1,000 people. You want to bring the numbers down. They're good from the point that they sort of put people into a box. They give you general areas. But every person I've worked with, I've said to them, right, now that the person who's profiled you has put you in a box so that they feel comfortable, would you like me to take you out of the box and treat you as an individual, uniquely different to every other person on the planet? And everybody wants to be treated as most respectfully, and the only way to do that is treat them as an individual. So that's where I then take them out. And I say, well, right, if you're taking people through a job application, using those systems, yes, you'll cull the numbers down to get a tight group that you want to interview. In the interview, then also do the face profiling at that time. And you can do that if somebody passes you in the street. So in an interview, a person walks through, you don't need photos in advance or anything like that. They walk in and bang, you've got their personality. And now you can then ask them questions using the body language and the micro expressions, looking for the confirmation that what they're telling you is true. I use it presently. If I look at someone's LinkedIn profile, I look at their photograph and I look at what they've written about themselves. And straight away, I know whether they wrote their own profile or not, or whether they can actually do what they've said in their profile. I know that we're using AI a lot at the moment, and there's a lot of programs out there that look at people's LinkedIn profiles and will tell you the personalities. And I'll guarantee all of them are wrong, because people don't write their own profiles. They've written them in the third party. They've had somebody else write it for them, or they've just used keywords that everybody else is using. And so the profiles are going to be wrong. So by being able to using those other systems where they're appropriate, because as it goes, when you're using a different system, you're looking at things like epigenetics, the mother-father connections, their emotions in the moment. And because this is why psychometric profiling, you're measuring somebody at that moment, whatever they're feeling, that then becomes their personality. But tomorrow they might feel completely different. But your facial features don't change overnight. And I just look at a neutral face. I don't need to see a smile or a frown or anything else. That's where the micro expressions and body language then come in. But up front, the facial features tell me everything I need to know. And in fact, one of the gentlemen over in Perth, he's a business coach. I profiled him from 5 photographs, gave him an audio report, which talked about all of his traits and everything else and how they'd work together and what things would push his buttons and all the rest of it. And it was after that he did a review for me where he told me that he used to be an undercover narcotics agent for 2 decades. He'd worked in a lot of other exotic areas as well. I know he's trained military and other personnel. And as he said, he needed to understand other people and also himself, or otherwise he wouldn't be alive today, being in those previous roles. He said that he used tools that we believe were 85 to 95% accurate to work his own profile out. But the fact that I could read him and put it into a 45-minute audio from his photographs, not only matching, but nuancing everything he'd learned about himself. That was the best confirmation I've ever had from on a business area.
Yeah, that's very powerful stuff. I love all this stuff. And like from my understanding, when I've learned through NLP is the representational systems, and you can look at these from the eyes, right? Like depending on what direction the eyes go, directly after you ask something, on whether it's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, audio, digital, constructed, remembered elements there. Is there some element of that to talk on the language of their level, or is this, because that's one level, but then you're talking like, little bits in the faces in certain areas, I'm assuming, as well at the same time?
Yeah, well, see, if you think of the old cop movies we used to watch, we had good cop, bad cop. And there'd be one cop who'd be very friendly with the people they were going to interrogate, for instance. There was a certain amount of truth in that. And really what's happening, the good cop, for as far as a criminal should be concerned, is not the good cop, because they're benchmarking him. They're building rapport. If you, as you said, you look up, it's visual. If you look to one side, it's going to be remembering something visually. If you look to the other side, it's going to be creating an answer. But when a lot of people out there are training it as one side, as one thing, the trouble is that about 10% of the population is cross-wired. So me, if I look up and to my left, I'm visually remembering something. If I look up to my right, I'm visually making up a story. Like if you ask me how many windows in the front of my house, and I stop and I have to think about that, I'm going to look up to my left. If you then ask me, well, you rip all those windows out and you put a big bay window in and put a deck out the front, what would it look like? I'm going to have to look the other way to sort of get that visual image in my head. So by asking somebody a question, but as I said, 10% of people are wired the opposite way. We'd always be visual up, but the real we remember could be the opposite side. So you ask people questions and have a chit chat around things with them. Ask them stories that, if they've been to the football, for instance, if they're a Knights fan, being here in Newcastle, they're talking about, you ask them about, did you go to the latest game? And you're chatting with them, talking about, did you see that particular play? And in that idle chit chat, when they don't feel threatened, they're happy to give you all the information. And you benchmark where they're looking. Then as you start getting into the questions, then we look at the words that we're using. We have open questions, we have closed questions, and we have probing questions. And what most people think are the open questions are really the probing questions. The open questions, just remember the initials TED. Tell me, tell, explain, describe. And you might say, tell me what happened at that time, but to soften the what by saying, tell me, gives them a chance to give you a lot of information. They'll give you the information they want to tell you. Then you ask the probing questions, which are the 5 W's and the H, when, where, what, where, how, etc. But you don't just go from the beginning to the end. You bounce around. You go, but over here, what happened over here? And back over at this point, what happened there? You can't create a lie in the backward direction. You've got to start at the beginning, know where your destination is, and work a path there. You can't go from the destination and go, okay, well, how did I get there? And try and backtrack it. So that then causes them to start getting nervous. The body language starts to show. The little twitches on the face, the micro expressions start to appear as well. And now you've narrowed it down to the closed questions, which are the yes and no answers. At that point, they're getting very nervous now. So where they may have been looking in one direction, first of all, with the eye representation is, this is their memory side, but now they're telling you about something they remembered and they're looking the other side. That's the beginning of picking up. But when you've got the micro expressions, that just takes it to a whole new level, because the face has got 43 muscles, can pull over 3,000 expressions that Paul Ekman and his team did a lot of research on and actually mapped all the muscle movements of every one of those expressions. But in 1969, when he went to Papua New Guinea, being the only white fellow that the Fray tribe had ever seen in their life, he was able to determine there were 7 expressions which are universal. And that's anger, contempt, and disgust, happiness, sadness, fear, and surprise. If you feel any one of those emotions inside, you'll have the corresponding expression on your face. And so now you start to see little twitches on the face when you look at somebody and they're talking about one of their friends that that they're really great friends with, and you tell them that friend has just gone through a tough time. You see a little vertical twitch on the side of the mouth. There's a quick little smile there, but they're quite happy about that person going through a tough time. So they're not possibly such a good friend after all. So those sort of little things are given away very quickly. And then you've got the body language going on as well. So there's so much information that you can pick up, which makes it a lot of fun.
It sure does. I love it. I love all this stuff. And I know that obviously most communication is nonverbal, especially body language, right? As well as the tone. But body language being the biggest one. What are some simple things? If we're going to, like, give some thoughts to people about, like, if you're meeting someone, I know, there's the standard ones like, oh, maybe if they're a bit arms crossed and things like that, but generally about body language, what to look for that could be different to what they're saying.
In body language, the thing is three things. Is it congruent? Is it, read them in clusters. And is it in context with what you were thinking about? Folded arms. Every time I gave a talk and I'd ask people, what's this folded arms mean? Everybody said, oh, person switched off and everything else. I gave a talk to the tax office in Newcastle in the town hall early in the morning. Old, what do you call it, sandstone building and everything else, freezing cold. When I was sitting down with everybody else before it started, I got my arms and legs folded. I was that cold. Not just, knees across each other, but my legs were locked at the ankles, legs together. It was freezing. And of course, when I got up, I was talking about body language, I asked about crossed arms, and the guy who'd been sitting next to me at the table had his arms folded. And everyone said, oh, switched off and everything else. So he opened his arms up. So I talked about other traits as it went on. So by the end of it, he's swatting flies, because every time I saw him pull a movement, I talk about that. But I thanked him at the end of it for playing the game and being such a great volunteer, victim, more to the point. But in that, the end result was, I told everyone, don't just take one thing on its own. Your folded arms could be that the person is cold, as we were that day. I've got torn tendons in my shoulders, so my arms get tired. So folding them takes a bit of pressure off the shoulders. I had a bank manager come up to me who said to me one day, he said, my second in charge here has always got his arms folded. What is this stuff about arms folded? I said, well, what's your problem? He said, well, I was told that the person switched off. I said, well, forget about that for a moment. Tell me about your second in charge. I said, what's he like as a second in charge? He said, he's pretty good. I said, did he listen to you? And he says, yes. And I said, does he go and do what you've asked him to do? He says, yes. And I said, when you're not there, does he go and do the stuff you've asked him to do? He said, yes. And I said, well, what are you complaining about? He said, their arms are folded, they're not as productive. I said, so could it be possible? First of all, I said, when you go to head office, do you take him with you at any time? He goes, yes. And I said, in the depot, in the branch, does he do it there? He says, only with me, nobody else in the staff. I said, but at head office, he does do it with the other managers. I said, do you think he might be giving himself a little warm hug because he feels intimidated? And what's going to happen if you stop him from folding his arms and you get him to put his arms down by his side, he's going to feel intimidated. Do you think he's going to be listening to anybody? I think you're going to improve his success or take it down. 6 months later, I was at an expo and there was another bank that was presenting at the time. And this guy asked me, when he heard what I did, asked me about, and he brought up the arms folded business. And I said, well, what's your problem with that? He said, oh, it wasn't my problem. He said, I had a boss 12 years ago, a manager who, complained about it all the time. And I said, well, is he still one of your managers? He said, oh, no, he left us and it ended up, he went to a different bank. It ended up being the guy that talked to me 6 months earlier. So for 12 years, he had had nothing but bad relationships with people who he got upset about having their arms folded. So never take one by itself. Look at the things in context and look at it in combination. I said, right, when the guy's comfortable, or actually give him something so he can take it. Now he's opened his arms up a little bit. He's still got a bit of a barrier there because he's got his arms out and he's holding something, so he's got a bit of space. I said, when you talk to him, come up beside him and point at what you're talking about, so you're not face to face. So these are the ways in which you help him to become more comfortable faster. And if you do that, he'll feel more comfortable, he'll be more loyal. But things to watch in people, just the real subtle things like the breathing change, is the tempo of the voice. Someone who's nervous will talk faster. I talk fast all the time. You can imagine what I'm like when I'm nervous, 100 miles an hour. But, when if they're nervous, they're going to start breathing in the chest only. They're not going to deep breathe in the abdomen. Look for changes in that. Look for the changes in their body movements. If they do have their arms folded, what are their feet? Where are they standing? Are they leaning back? Are they turning sideways to you? Are they facing towards their door because they want to get away? So you look at things in clusters. The more, well, I was growing up in the lounge rooms, all of our parents used to have those little plaster ducks. There were 3 ducks on the wall. Big one at the bottom, smaller one, and then a little small one at the top. It gave the impression that they were flying off in the distance. And one of the things that we grew up with was the old saying, get your ducks in a row. So whenever you're putting things together, make sure you had everything aligned. Same thing with reading people. If some of the body language is saying they're not connected and others are saying they are, then you've got to go a little bit further. Don't focus on the ones that seem they're not connected. Focus on the ones that, putting them all together and go, okay, have I reading all this? Is there something else going on? That's why the body language on one side, but then the expressions added so much more to it. By first of all, reading their facial features and getting that really solid foundation, then I build everything else on it. Because as I say, relationships are the foundation of everything we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love all that stuff. Really interesting about those different elements. Thank you for sharing all of those. And one thing that I'm thinking about as well now, because we're in more of a hybrid world, right? Like, COVID's put us into Zoom like we are now, and everything else that's similar, as well as in person. I think, we're craving more connection as well. So what are the differences here? Because we can only see so much in a Zoom screen, right? Compared to in person. Like we can see the feet in person. We can't see the person's feet now, as an example, and potentially not even their arms, right? At this point in time where we're speaking. So what are some of the differences that we should be looking at or thinking about, in comparison between, in-person and virtual settings?
Yeah, well, so we've always got the facial expressions. The only problem with that one is when we're on Zoom, what's the technology like? What's the time delays? Because as I said, a micro expression happens within that first fifth of a second down to 1/25th of a second. So it's like the click of the fingers. So if there's a delay, then you're not going to get that very well. But it's engaging people. If you've got 20 people on screen and you're having a work meeting, you need to be able to engage everybody in the conversation. Listen to the way they're responding. At the moment I'm watching you nodding as we're talking. So I'm looking for those sort of things as well. I look for everything I possibly can, because as you said, we can't see the hands when they're down below the screen area. We can't see the feet. We can't really see the breathing rate, but that's why you're getting them engaged. And listen to the tempo, the changes in their voice as you're speaking. Are they focused forward? Are they getting a lot of other interruptions around them? But the thing is, outside of the meetings on Zoom, good leaders, well, their job is to make themselves redundant. That's a leader's role, by raising others up to do the work that they're doing so that they can then go on and do other things. Because everybody out there has got this new catch cry, it's been going around for a while: work on your business and not in your business. Well, that's only ever going to happen when you have loyalty within your business and the people in the business are working in the business, so you go and work on it. So you've got to be able to connect with them. You need to understand them. In businesses, when time management came out, by God, originally it looked like it really worked, but long term, it did more damage to businesses than anything else, because in a successful business, 2/3 of the conversations, 67% of it, is idle chit chat around the coffee machine, around the water coolers, and people passing each other in the office. Going to the printer, which was in a local centralized place, but not close to any one person. Everyone had to walk to it and they were talking, communicate. Once they took all that out, then people started just being focused on the job. Now, we're social beings. Without that social connection, the end result is it does have a mental health issue. So you can imagine all the people who are working from home now, they thought that, yep, great, I'm saving a lot of time on travel. But if they've got kids and everything else, they're now mixing it up with working and, doing their personal life and then back to the working, back to their personal life. In a lot of cases, putting in more hours than they ever put in before and not getting paid for it. And so they're actually starting to recognize that. They're starting to get exhausted. The managers who did KPIs, who got real upset when they couldn't see the people at their desk, look at the back of their head and make sure they were working. Now we're trying to check everybody at home, and they were, couldn't time manage them anymore. And so that caused so much distrust with all the workers as well. So we've got all those issues coming up. We need to make sure that we have one-on-one chats as well. Just the boss picking up the phone and ringing one of their people and saying, hey, forget about work. Just want to see how things are going. What's been happening at home? How do you find that this is working in there? Is there anything we can do to help you? And because when people are happy, they're more productive. And when they're more productive, the company makes more money. But the micromanagers think that they're saving the company money, but they're actually losing money because they're incompetence in the way they treat their staff.
Yeah, so interesting. All these different elements here of what to look at. And I guess if we're wanting to, like, ourselves go in and really start to understand, how to recognize and analyze these patterns, right, in human behavior, what do you think are some good, like, initial steps of what to look at? Because there's so much out there, right, of looking at these things as some good foundational elements to help us, take that to the next level.
Okay, well, one of the things that, I always give it away every time I'm having a talk with anybody is I've got a free course. It takes 28 minutes, so it doesn't take long to get through it. It's 14 short little modules. The shortest video is 28 seconds. So if somebody says, well, I don't have the time to watch the video, I go, well, by the time you've told me you haven't got time, you could have watched it. But that has a couple of traits in it that people can learn how to go and read for themselves. It also looks, as you mentioned before, about where the eyes move when somebody's sourcing information. So I put that in there, but where a lot of people do a keynote speak, they'll get up on stage and they'll use that in the general terms. Everybody looks this side to remember. I take the misnomers out of that and try and educate people a little bit, and that's what you'll get in that course. Then from there, if they want to know more, there's either myself or there's, just come back to me, because I've got, when I started doing what I was doing, the first thing I wanted to do was to find out who else were working in my area. Not because I saw them as competition, but so I could go and meet them. So I could then find out, could I collaborate with them? Could I even go to the next level and co-create things with them? And how can I share what they do out to my public as well, to my network? And they're reciprocated. So if if they don't want to work with me, then I know somebody else that they can work with. So do that free course and then have a chat with me is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, nice. That's I love that make it simplified, get everything into one area, and build it up from there, which is really powerful. And yeah, it's been a very powerful interview today. I've loved all these different elements and how you analyze me and all these different nuances, because they're I'm always a student of always growing, and I know a lot of things, but there's plenty more to know. And so I'll be definitely looking into that as well, to check it out for myself, to see what else I can learn to take my analyzing to the next level. And I guess, it's been powerful today. As we're wrapping up, like, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Well, I live by a number of different philosophies. One of them is you always leave the planet in a better state than you found it. And that came, first of all, from what you do for yourself dies with you, but what you do for others and for the community isn't always will be eternal. But to do all of that, the one thing I've always remembered is the most important thing I ever learned will be the next thing I learn after I think I know everything. So never stop learning, but listen to everybody, take it all in. But there's an old Arabic saying, trust everybody, but lock up your camels at night. And my interpretation of that is listen to everybody, but then go away and assess it for yourself. That's why, as I said, I'll give away that free course so people can go and play with it and work it out for themselves. Does this work for me? And if it does, then you do more of that. And that's why I say to people, test everything, check it out. Don't just say, I don't believe that'll work. Ask how it works. And then delve into that, see if it fits, and then apply it to what you're doing. Because if you don't, the only person you're robbing is yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So true. And love all of that elements of what you shared there. And You know, we connected through our network, so I learned about your awesome journey from being in various senior positions to being international profiling and communication specialist. Awesome guy, so knowledgeable, so many decades of knowledge and wisdom that you're sharing with us today, and I'm sure much more that you can share with us through your course and other areas that you help organizations and people. And I'm sure you continue to help people to read people so they can build successful relationships, negotiations, improve teams, staff loyalty, and close deals. I'm very grateful that we can look forward to working with you. So how can people find you, get in contact with you, and get access to this free course of yours?
Well, the easiest way to find me is my website, which is alanstevens.com.au, and Alan with one L, so ALAN, and Stevens, STEVENS.com.au. And just that'll take you to the website. My courses, though, the online courses are on another platform, but if you put this / and the word free behind it, that will take you to the training platform. But what I will give you is a direct link, Athin, because LinkedIn and Facebook, if you put it in social media, they put an extra tracking link on it, which kills the redirection, and it gets a 404 error. It doesn't go anywhere. So I'll give you the direct link to that, but alanstevens.com.au is the best place.
Awesome. Definitely check out Alan, guys, with just generally about what he's doing, but this free course, I'll be checking it out definitely, because I'm sure I don't know about these, microfacial movements among other things. So I'll definitely learn a lot. I'm sure all of you will as well. And thank you to everyone for watching and listening to this show where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Athin Cassiotis, or visit my website, athincassiotis.com. And if you want to grow and scale your business, you can reach out to me in any platform to see if we're a good fit. And I completely agree with you, or do I? The only way you know is if you tune in next time. So until next time, remember that our business grows when we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So remember to design your growth and results.